Welcome back, friends. I hope everyone is enjoying these even better than usual playoffs so far. As we get closer to the conference finals, I might start making analysis and prediction videos for the closing rounds as a sort of trial run for next season. Since the last video, it has come out that Utah will select 6th overall in the NHL draft, and the finalists have been revealed for the team branding. The former will get its video closer to the draft when I will examine a handful of likely selections for Utah. Spoiler alert, really hoping Artyom Levshinov slips to the 6th pick. But for now, let's talk about what this team is going to be called and possibly look like once the branding is in place. I'm GMPM. Welcome back to the channel. Getting right down to business, here is your list of 20 possible team names to be determined through fan voting, presumably throughout the summer and perhaps into the 2024-25 NHL season. Before I get started breaking them down, I just want to take a moment to mourn the absence of the Utah Eagles on this list. It would have been brilliant. It would have given the team a branding continuity dating back to the 1960s and welcomed in all of those old school fans right away. Especially fitting on the 30th anniversary of the Golden Eagles' departure from Salt Lake City. Huge missed opportunity for SEG that's going to sting for quite a while, as one of the old heads myself. This is especially frustrating because looking at the list of 20 finalists, I see no fewer than 12 absolute non-starters that are as good as dead on arrival. Meaning we might as well just skip to the bracket of 8 straight away. HC I genuinely believed was going to be the 2024-25 placeholder with zero chance of being taken seriously as a finalist for the long-term brand, but I stand corrected. Caribou, Squall, Powder, Glaciers, Canyons, Freeze, Frost, and Ice are all too soft-sounding for the NHL. Fury, Blast, and the admittedly on-brand Mountaineers just sound like generic beer league teams. It would be a disappointment to see any of these gain traction, frankly. They could have had the Eagles or the 47s, but we got this instead. In any case, that leaves the Yeti, Swarm, Hive, Venom, Outlaws, Black Diamond. Please, for the love of all that is good, please singularize Black Diamond. Mammoth and Blizzard as the finalists that can actually be taken seriously, and will hopefully be what comprises the final bracket of 8 when we get to that phase. I'll give my picks, the 4 teams that I supported in this first round of voting, at the end of the video. But for now, I just want to take a moment to go over my thoughts on the 8 legitimate pitches in the round of 20. Of these, the one I'm least invested in is the Utah Yeti. Something about it just feels kind of meme-centered the way the Seattle Kraken got all of its momentum a few years ago, which, just let me say, I feel was the right decision for that market at that time. But now we have one meme brand in the NHL, we don't need to turn it into a trend. To be fair, I'm going to remain objective on this, and make a case for how it could actually go decently well. I've heard a lot of people misguidedly arguing against Yeti on the grounds that the Colorado Avalanche have a history with, and therefore a perceived absolute claim to, all Yeti branding. However, the team has been gradually purging all of its particularly stylized branding elements in recent years, from the number font on their jerseys to the Yeti mascot Howler, now a St. Bernard named Bernie. This even includes the Yeti foot shoulder patch being replaced with the C from the Colorado state flag, but in team colors. This was a huge point of contention for some Avs fans. I personally was pretty indifferent to it. If anything, it's the original number and nameplate fonts that I miss most. Since the mascot switch, another team has even taken Colorado's Yeti mascot name, Howler, for its own. What team was that? The Arizona Coyotes. Now, all of Arizona's branding stayed with owner Alex Meruelo when the team moved to Utah, and there's no doubt that includes Howler. But I'm sure deals could be made with both Colorado management and Meruelo to bring the original Howler back for a Utah Yeti franchise. Just a thought. I don't think it's at all likely to happen, but I do want to plant the idea in everybody's mind for possible future reference. Anyway, local support for Yeti seems to be flagging in the last week or so I'm starting to doubt it will even go very far in the bracket, especially if it runs into something like the Utah Outlaws. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, Utah Swarm is brilliant. It has a lot of local appeal, ties into the Beehive state identity, and would lend itself extremely well to what is still the current Jazz black, white, yellow color scheme. I don't think the Utah Hive has the same appeal despite being very much in the same vein. It's kind of the diet version of Utah Swarm. If anything, the Hive is what the Delta Center should be called by Utah Swarm fans. In either case, I'm really annoyed that EA hasn't given me anything B-themed to work with in NHL 24 for uniform and branding concepts, because I could have a lot of fun with that. Just take my Eagles concepts from a couple videos ago and imagine a bee in place of the heavily stylized bird, I suppose. Times like this, I wish I was a better graphic designer. I consider the Utah Venom to be the real dark horse of the voting process. It manages to float just above that milquetoast, Fury, Blast, HC territory, while having a local relevancy and league novelty that could keep it in the running to the very end. It's certainly not a front and center characteristic of the local environment, but make no mistake, there's no shortage of especially bitey wildlife here in Utah that will send you to the ER in an uncomfortable hurry. I also like Venom for its potential unusual color scheme approach. As much as I've said I'd like to see Utah turn aside the more unorthodox brands of recent arrivals in favor of something much more traditional, I wouldn't be mad at a fair degree of creativity with a team called the Utah Venom. I am not wild about Utah Outlaws, but it's locally relevant, touches on a branding note that hasn't been hit in the NHL as of yet, and is gaining a ton of local traction, likely lending to the decrease in Utah Yeti momentum lately. It should be noted that the Intermountain West made up a good chunk of the Wild West, but it does also invite the question, at what point in history does organized crime become socially fashionable? The Utah Outlaws are being pitched as a serious branding possibility, but if you try dropping a team in any professional sport called, say, the Chicago Gangsters, there's no way that would fly. I'm guessing the line must be drawn somewhere shortly prior to the Depression. Just let me be clear, I'm not attempting to seriously be topical here in any case. I'm just extremely amused. Moving on from that issue, one thing I do like about the Utah Outlaws option is that it would once again open up a lot of creative potential in the uniform designs, which I'm not as fervently against as it may have seemed in my first branding video. It's just not my preference, and I do worry about designers being extra with it. Having tan or brown as a main uniform color is novel and interesting, but I don't want to see gaudy Old West jersey numbers or nameplates. Admittedly, this objectively has a ton of potential if done with some restraint. I just absolutely hate the idea that they'd make it cringy and campy. Utah Black Diamond, singular please, like an avalanche or a lightning storm, sounded really weird to me at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I really embraced the combination of uniqueness with an undeniable local identity attached to it. There are no shortage of slopes in the area that are well equipped to be the find out part of any overconfident skier or snowboarder's journey. You'd have to make sure the team hit the ice ready to win with a name like that, but it could be the most avant-garde of the options, and I kind of want to see it win if only for the uniforms. Of all the options, I feel like the typeface on the established 2024 graphic would almost have to be used for the jersey numbers and nameplates. I really like this. Utah Mammoth gets a little close to the generic buffer zone, but it's still at least passingly locally relevant, still novel to Big Four sports leagues, and has a great deal of creative potential for color scheming and uniform design. I'd be interested in seeing the logo and uniform pitches to go along with this. It could be done really well. I like that it's a team you could drop into the NHL right away and not have the name sound remotely jarring. The Vegas Golden Knights and Seattle Kraken were all kinds of unconventional and dissonant to hear in context for the first time. But to say you're going to watch the Utah Mammoth versus Calgary Flames game sounds like something you've been doing for 30 years. That makes me an instant fan. Finally, we have the Utah Blizzard. The NHL is already rife with forces of nature. Avalanche, hurricanes, lightning... Wild? Anyway, Blizzard almost feels missing in that light, and I wouldn't be at all unhappy to see Utah make up for it here. The other thing about the Utah Blizzard that I guess has to be touched on is that it indirectly, by way of a nickname, carries on a certain naming trend with Utah sports embraced in the 90s. I can already envision friends and coworkers talking about how they scored Blizz tickets for the weekend. Pick 3 team colors, hold fast to them, don't over-stylize it, and you'll have an instant classic. One overarching theme I'm noticing with a lot of these finalists is that they really lend themselves well to the color scheme of black, white, and light blue that was used in the established 2024 graphic. There are a lot of touches on that which I feel would go well on uniforms themselves, so let's see if that actually materializes in the final product next year. Now let's get down to actual designs. As noted previously, EA doesn't offer anything B-themed to work with for these options. But there's still a lot that I can play with for others. Let me show you some of my ideas. Just keep in mind I'm seriously restricted by the tools EA gives you. Yet again, I'm not a fan of the Utah Yeti pitch in general, but I had a little fun with it by playing with it as an extension of the established 2024 graphic. I went with a mostly monochrome design for both the home and road designs, but kept the squint or you'll miss it splash of light blue throughout, because I think that's a really nice touch. Just try to imagine the Utah typeface from the graphic as the nameplate font. I'm a real fan of that for some reason. Finally, the third jersey is a jazz nod. Purple is who we are motif that I've played with in past designs. Whatever the branding ends up being, I won't be at all surprised to see purple as a main team color, but I think I'm compensating for that ahead of time by mostly implementing it in my third jerseys. That's not me being down on purple jerseys. There's definitely a lot of room for a team to step in with that kind of color scheme. The Kings and Ducks have both stopped using it after all. Same line of thinking with this Utah Black Diamond concept. I tried longer than I should have here, but I couldn't get the logo down just right, so file this away as more of a vague idea or outline than a legitimate pitch. I'd kind of like to see a logo where there's an entire abstract mountain with a black diamond forming the peak, but NHL 24 just doesn't allow for that level of creative freedom. Again, light blue appears to a really subtle effect, getting even more mileage out of the established graphic. And I think the gradient on the third jersey is a really nice touch given the brand motif. All respect to the Avalanche, but a black diamond is another really good way to find yourself buried in snow. This Utah Venom concept is more of a work in progress. I went into it with a very defined idea in mind, then gradually watched that idea disintegrate as I just couldn't get the maroon and brown to gel with the neon green. And the result is something that would be, I swear, unintentionally familiar to the team that just moved up I-15 to get here. With that being said, the idea I had in mind is one that you may have seen hints of in the last concept video I made. The louder a color is, the less you can reasonably use of it. But the inverse of that is, the less you use of a color, the louder it can be. Unfortunately, the neon green just clashed so badly with the base color scheme that it got pushed out of the home and away designs entirely, leaving those designs looking far less, well, venomous than I had hoped. And only got to make a real appearance on the third jersey, which came out way too close to Dallas's high-visibility thirds than I really intended. Unless Utah Venom doesn't make it past the round of 20, this is something I'd like to circle back around to in the future. I do think I'm onto something, it just needs way more time in the oven. For the Utah Outlaws, the overarching theme was bad guys wear black. The home and third jerseys are covered in it, while even the road jersey has as much black as I can fit onto a design that necessarily requires white as the main color. Another note on the home jersey in particular is that I took the opportunity to play with that Golden Eagles reverse retro concept I put together the last time I did jersey designs, and I think it looks really good here. The font used on all three designs was certainly a decision, and would probably be kind of cringy if the jerseys themselves weren't pretty straightforward and traditional. Even though Outlaws isn't a brand I'm fully behind as of yet, that brand and this look definitely grew on me as I put it together. Full disclosure, I started getting really tired when it came time to do this Utah Blizzard concept, and it may have suffered for that. But I knew all along that I wanted to take this opportunity to play with the purple, powder blue, white concept seen on the Utah Yeti thirds from earlier. It seems to come up a lot in branding speculation for the team, and I can see why. It really works. For the logos, I kind of pulled a Minnesota Wild with the bear representing wildlife in general, but the inclusion of the wolf alternate just comes from a place of wanting to use imagery that ties wildlife to the climate, and feel free to think of that as the main logo if it helps sell the design. Finally, I'm just going to apologize for the overwhelming powder blue third jersey right away. I didn't want to rehash the black diamond third jersey with this one, and I do like these really saturated third jersey concepts that have one of the team colors just completely take over the design, but this blue isn't it, and I really broke my own rule about loud collars. Maybe Utah Blizzard will win the bracket and I'll get a chance to revisit it in the future. For now, you don't have to tell me that this was a miss, I already know it is. This Utah Mammoth pitch follows a similar line of thinking with the introduction of brown to the layout because, mammoth. I went against my usual tastes and included an asymmetrical striping pattern here, but the rest of the design went super traditional, and I think it really goes well with that whole branding that makes the team feel like they've been here forever feel. The road jersey in particular looks like something I would have bought at the Pro Image back in 1994, and I love it for that. I forgot that the font that I'm using here is what the Columbus Blue Jackets currently are, so I apologize for that. But I think what I'm doing with it is different enough that it can be worked around here. The defunct inaugural fonts of the Colorado Avalanche and Minnesota Wild were also considered for this one. For the third jersey, it's once again almost completely saturated in one color, but not blindingly so. And with the exception of a tan very similar to what found its way into my Utah Outlaws designs, with a wide swath of it sweeping across the bottom of the jersey much like the wing along the bottom of those very overproduced Salt Lake Golden Eagles designs from years gone by, that was an intentional nod. So not being a graphic designer myself and limited to the design resources of NHL 24, these are my uniform pitches for some of the branding options that I feel have a legitimate chance of making it through the bracket when it starts. Hopefully sometime soon. As much fun as I have coming up with these, I burned myself out making them so badly that I will be perfectly happy not seeing NHL's Creative Suite again for quite some time. As for what brands I'm most behind, it was the Venom, Swarm, Mammoth, and Black Diamond that got my 4 allotted votes. How about all of you? What brands got your vote in the round of 20, and are there any you'll be particularly voting against once the bracket rolls around? Let me know down in the comments and let's get the conversation going about it. That's all for now. If you like this video, then please be sure to like, comment, share, and especially subscribe. Let YouTube know there's a good growing community developing over on this channel. Click the notification bell to know right away when a new video goes up. I'm GMPM, and I look forward to seeing you back here next time.